thank you for joining us at the ever-improving No Soundbites Allowed podcast. My name is Michael Vasquez. We thank you for joining us in this adventure of describing the politics that go on in our nation on a personal and local level as often as possible, giving you, the audience, more than just 30 seconds to understand what's going on in our nation. We look forward to joining you as we go. Just sit back, enjoy the ride. Please remember, if you like the episodes, like it, share it, let other people know, and if you can, please donate, even if it's $2, even if it's $5, because it all makes a difference. We thank you, and here we go. Hello, everybody. Hello, and thank you for joining me. This is Michael Voss with the ever so popular podcast of the No Soundbites Allowed, and I'm doing a live stream. I know it's Sunday morning, about 11:30, and I know a lot of people are at church or they're just waking up, so I understand if not everyone's with me. I'm going to be putting up a question in a second here for people to look at, and so bear with me. It's a real simple one. It's a yes or no, and please let me know what you think. And you can, of course, answer this either during or after, whichever, but let me know what your thoughts are. Now, beyond that, there's a lot of other things I want to ask about, and I want to talk about, because there's a lot going on. We're just 2 days away from the election for the midterms in 2018. There's going to be a lot going on. We're seeing massive amounts of commercials and mailers that are going out. If people remember, back in February of this year, I had announced and mentioned that very publicly that I thought there would be about $16 million spent on the New York 22nd election. And surprisingly, and everyone told me I was just out of my mind, that it couldn't possibly happen like that. And here, lo and behold, we have now hit $18 million spent on this election alone. It's one of the top 10 races across the nation. And I know that everyone is sick and tired of this. We are all upset. It's just so much just being blasted at us. And I've been talking to people. I've been doing a lot about the election, going out, getting people to vote, and reminding them that it's important that you vote. Anyone who tells you that your vote is not important has an agenda, and they don't want your vote messing up their agenda. I tell you that directly. I've said it always, and I say it again. It doesn't matter if you're voting for or against anything I believe in. I could care less. As long as you have a reason to vote, go out there and vote. But your vote does matter. That is absolutely true. And anyone who tells you it isn't has an agenda. But I also made certain predictions about the New York 22nd race. And I understand everyone's getting pissed off because there's so many commercials. And because $18 million has been spent, almost all of it, about $12 million, $13 million of it, from outside spending. I know it's annoying. You know what? Go to congress.gov. It is an impartial site. See the bills that have actually been put in. Does that match the campaign promises that are out there? You decide for yourself. Go to WRVO, look up the downtown hospital, look up the email gate, decide if that is the character that you want to see in a candidate. Look it up for yourself. Make your own decision. Those are impartial news sites and impartial sites listing what's going on, so you can make a decision. Forget about the commercials. Just go there. Don't even go by me. Go and figure it out for yourself. Separate of that, there is a lot that's going on that is going to affect this upcoming election. And I know I haven't had a lot of time to talk to people, as I was mentioning. I've been out working, trying to get people to come out and vote. I've put on about 123 miles in the Binghamton Southern Tier area walking just by myself. I did that in the last 13 days. It is an enormous amount. We're talking about 9 miles a day. I'm 50 years old. I am tired, in the rain, in the cold, with sleet on and off. And I am happy to do that because it is an important thing that everyone comes out and vote. And I hope everyone will, no matter whom you choose, although I have a preference, and that is, of course, to the Republican Party and the Republican candidates, because I think they overall, especially in the Southern Tier, especially in the New York 22nd District, are higher quality candidates. That's my choice. Hey, you're on a Republican political commentary. What else do you expect? But I do have reasons for that, and I can go into that. But I wanted to share a little bit with you because I know I've been a little bit behind. I haven't been able to talk a lot. The last time I was on with Facebook, they completely blocked the entire video, which was very upsetting. And I know I'm rushing a little bit here and not going into great detail because, well, I'm going back out to work today in about an hour's time. So I do want to take a little bit of time just to be able to speak with you before I go back out to work and try and get more people to come out and vote, no matter whom they're going to vote for. So I hope people do enjoy this. And when you do get to see this, assuming Facebook puts it out there, I hope everyone gets to enjoy that. And I hope the volume's coming across properly. Mike, I see Mike Marshall has joined us. Please do let me know if you hear that. It's been a very busy week. We've had Colonel Oliver North of the NRA come down. He's endorsed Claudia Tenney. That's a very big thing. It's huge news, and I'm happy that he came here. In fact, we've had, including yesterday, Saturday, November 3rd, we had Sarah Huckabee Sanders, Press Secretary of the United States, come into Binghamton. And I got to tell you, this has been huge. Binghamton, New York, this is a little tiny town where we just don't have anything massively political going on here. We don't have national heroes or national renowned members of Congress. We don't have the center of New York politics. I mean, we're not Albany, we're not New York City. And yet 7 major figures of this government have come into this city on behalf of, in particular, Congresswoman Claudia Tenney, to emphasize how important it is to vote. We've had the president come here. We've had the press secretary. We've had the president of the NRA. We've had the chairman of the Intelligence Committee, Representative Nunes, come down here. We've had a couple of other people as well. So, I mean, that's a lot of attention in a very small area. And I have to tell you, that tells you how important this race is and how important your vote is. When a small town like Binghamton, the New York 22nd District, when we're getting that many people, and it also says something about our candidate in Congresswoman Claudia Tenney, that she has relationships to be able to draw in these kind of people. I mean, on the Democratic side, we have Rosie O'Donnell. Fantastic. I mean, if you love Rosie O'Donnell, there you go. But even Rosie O'Donnell wasn't willing to come to Binghamton. Anthony Brindisi, the Democratic candidate, had to go to New York for a fundraiser with Rosie O'Donnell because she wouldn't come to Binghamton, or she's not liked in Binghamton. I don't know. But that says something. Governor Cuomo, who supports Anthony Brindisi, he had to go to New York City to do a $25,000 plate fundraiser in New York City because he couldn't come to Binghamton. Either Governor Cuomo doesn't like Binghamton, which I'm pretty sure he doesn't because he doesn't come here. But on top of that, he's so negatively viewed, and Democrats, Republicans, everybody has a negative view of Governor Cuomo, no matter whether he's leading polls or not. He's negatively viewed because of the corruption in New York State, and he won't even come in to support a candidate that he says he's raising money for. That says a lot. We have major figures in the government who are trying to help improve our government that are coming to Binghamton in support of one candidate. The other side, the Democratic side, are not willing to come into Binghamton to support the candidate they say they support. That should tell you a lot about this race and who should be in it. It tells you a lot about what's going to happen on who gets elected. We either have a candidate on the Republican side who has people who are willing to say, we will come to Binghamton and support you, and we'll support what you're doing. Or we have on the Democratic side, you're going to support us, the party, and we don't care about you or your area. We just want you to win. That's what the race has come down to, quite honestly. And that makes a big difference. But if you don't believe me, just evaluate it. Look it up. You got Rosie O'Donnell, you got Governor Cuomo hiding in New York City where Anthony Brindisi is going to raise money versus the people who've actually come into Binghamton all on the side of the Republican. That says a lot. But that's not the main focus of what I'm going to be talking about today. And I thank you, Mike, for letting me know that the volume's good. Like I said, Facebook has been giving me a lot of problems recently of being able to bring this podcast to you, which I believe is censorship. Besides the 800 political sites that they have recently eliminated, we've seen that they have gone out, and for Republicans and conservatives, I know of 0 liberal or progressive websites or blog podcasts or even Facebook Live that they have removed on the liberal side. You just haven't heard of that. And I haven't heard of them removing individuals and pages that are conservative or, progressive or liberal. It just doesn't happen. And that's suppression of thought. That's compulsion by act of lack of choice. And that's a sad thing. And we should be very aware of it. But I continue to keep going forward. I'm going to continue to keep my voice out there because I don't depend on Facebook, although it is a great way to reach everybody. So hopefully this isn't all too disjointed. Like I said, I'm rushing. I'm tired. It's been a lot of work. But I do want to talk about a lot of important things. One of the things that obviously is very important, is going to have an impact on this election coming up, is the migrant caravan. Now, a lot of us have heard about that, and we've heard that most recently, the migrant caravan has come out and they have decided that they're going to sue President Trump. They're going to sue the United States government because they believe they have a constitutional right. And that's the poll that I put up there for everyone. Is it illegal to deny foreigners U.S. rights? Does someone in a foreign country have the right in the United States for anything? Do they have a right to vote? Do they have a right to Second Amendment? Do they have a right to own firearms? Do they have the right of free speech? Go down through the list. And in particular, the Fifth Amendment, due process. Do they have a right to due process? And I would have to say, no, you don't. I don't care what country they're coming from. I don't care how they're coming here. I don't care where they're coming from. And I don't care what their reason is. The answer is no, you don't. They don't have a right to the United States. They don't have a right to our Constitution. They are not Americans. They are foreign nationals. In this case, Hondurans, and from South America, Middle America, Latin America. They're from other parts of the world. And I could care less. They could have been coming from Nicaragua. They could be coming from Libya. They could be coming from Germany. They could be coming from England. It doesn't really matter. They can come from Australia for all I care. They don't have American rights. They're not Americans. They're foreign nationals. They have the rights of whatever their country allows. So if they're from Ecuador, they have Ecuadorian rights. If they're coming from Chad, they have the rights of those in Chad, or Liberia, or Moscow, or not Moscow, but Russia. Name the country around the world. They have those rights. They don't have American rights. They're not our citizens. So when I see that they're suing the United States government for rights, they're foreign nationals and they're on foreign ground. I mean, think about this for a second. If we were to allow this, if this is to go forward, then someone in any country in the world, imagine that there's someone in Qatar who decides that he wants to come to America and he's going to sue America. Matter of fact, the guy in Qatar says he wants to have a gun. Japan, I'll even get Japan, which has very strict regulations on individuals being able to have a firearm, any kind of firearm. Imagine someone in Japan saying, hey, guess what? I want to come to America at some point in the future. And because America has the Second Amendment, I choose to use that Second Amendment right in Japan to be able to own a firearm. Japan will tell you you're out of your mind. You can't possibly do that. And they're like, well, I have a plane ticket to come to America. Who cares? I have a visa to come to America. Who cares? You're not an American citizen. You're a Japanese citizen. And you don't have a right to own a firearm. So you can't do that. I don't care if America has a Second Amendment right. Japan doesn't. You can't do that. I mean, it's that simple. It literally is that simple. You don't get the right just because you say, well, I'll come to America at some point. So what? You're not an American citizen. You don't get that right. I don't understand how I can make it more simple and make it more clear. And I understand that it's being phrased in the media. And again, let's take a look at how it's been phrased. Migrants in caravan sue Trump and his administration, alleging abuse of constitutional rights. How can you abuse a right that doesn't exist? See, it's made in a very emotional context to try and make you feel for them and feel like, oh my God, they're being denied. And, President Trump is doing this horrible thing, denying people rights. That's the message that's being put out there. It's an emotional message. It's meant to make you react emotionally but it actually has no basis in fact. It's trying to drive you off of this emotion to not think about what's actually happening. And that's a very important thing. And again, I go back to the Second Amendment because I think it's a very powerful amendment for American citizens that no one else in the world really has. No one else has that constitutional absolute right to be able to protect yourself from the government, as well as your home and your property, to protect yourself. You can't do that in other countries. That is not a fundamental right, an absolute right given to every single American citizen. And you can't use our Constitution in another country. It does not apply. It's the same thing as if you go over to England and say, I want to buy a gun in England. You can't. But you could say, well, I'm an American, and in America, I have the Second Amendment. It's a constitutional right. And they will tell you in England, well, that's fantastic, but you're in England or the United Kingdom, whatever you want to call it, and you, in our country, you don't have that right, and it's not our law, and you can't do that. It's the same way. It works the same way. I can't go to another country and bring my constitutional rights to that country and expect that country to abide by those laws. It doesn't work. I go by, if you're in a foreign country, you have to abide by the laws of that foreign country, but you are not conveyed extra rights because you happen to be in that country or that you are going to that country. You're not a citizen of that country. You have to abide by their laws, but you are not conveyed their rights. There is a difference. It's a fundamental difference. And just because you want it doesn't mean you should get it. You legally do not have the right just because you say, I would like to have it, or that because I'm traveling there, or I may want to migrate to that country. That doesn't give you anything. You are not legally bound by that. Is this not clear? I understand it isn't, because the media is talking about it and there's a lawsuit going on, which should be laughed out of the courts, because Hondurans are not Americans. They are not bound by American law. They're not on even American soil to make a claim of rights in America. Our rights do not extend across the world to people who are not Americans. It just doesn't. I mean, this is pretty simple international law. And I hope I've made very clear. Mike, tell me, I know you're watching, let me know. This should be very clear. It should be very obvious that we can't have international laws like that. Otherwise, everything goes crazy. Everything goes crazy. But maybe that's not clear enough. So let me go into it a little bit more, because people are saying, oh my God, how can President Trump do all this? Well, very simple. Because a lot of people are upset that President Trump has said, and this is why the migrants are suing, President Trump has said that every single one of the migrants that are trying to come into America in that caravan are going to be detained into tent-like cities, which will probably be an upgrade from the shanty towns that many of them are living in Honduras and in Nicaragua and in Mexico. So this will be an upgrade in the quality of life for them, quite honestly, because we're not talking about little Boy Scout pup tents. We're talking about 20-man, 30-man, 50-man tents with air conditioning and power and electricity and good beds and proper access to water and food. Let's not get this wrong. They're not sitting around in a little pup tent like it's the Middle Ages. They're actually going to be taken care of. And Mike Marshall did mention to me, American citizens are the only ones that receive the protection of rights provided by the Constitution. And Mike, you are absolutely correct. Americans are the only ones that are covered by the Constitution. There is no one else who's covered by that. But let me make my point. So he said that he will detain them. Now, let's be very clear. He doesn't want illegal aliens breaking into our country through our border illegally, because that's a violation of our law. And so they have no right. That would make them illegal aliens. So he's well within his rights to do so. He has said that he is going to detain them as they seek asylum and go through the process, which is within his rights, and it allows them to have their rights. So when people say, oh, well, he's breaking the rules, he's not allowing them to declare asylum, that is incorrect. Again, that's emotional. That's meant to drive you into an emotional frenzy. But he didn't say you're not going to have the ability to declare asylum. He said you're going to sit in this detainee area as we determine whether or not you have the right under asylum to be able to come into America. And in case people are wondering, well, you can't do that. Actually, yes, the president can. It is called 8 U.S.C. Code 1225. Under that description, in particular, Section B, subsection 3, Article 4, it goes into, in great detail, the fact that the president, or actually any migrants that are coming into the United States, can and must be detained. There is no code of law, and I've been looking it up. I've been looking up the U.S. Code. I've been looking through several of the Supreme Court decisions. There is absolutely nothing that says that if an illegal alien or an alien seeking asylum in the United States comes into the country, that we must release them into the general population. There is absolutely nothing that says that we must, once someone has come onto American soil and they decide that they want to be an American citizen or that they want to live in our country, there is a difference. The Hondurans are coming into America not to become American citizens, but to be in America, to have a better quality of life, not to stop being Hondurans. There is a difference. But they're going to come into the United States, and there's nothing that says we have to let them into the general population, that we release them into San Francisco or to L.A. or to Binghamton, New York. There's absolutely nothing that says that we have to let them out into the general population and disappear, which some 70% of illegal aliens under asylum consideration do disappear into the public and never show up for their meetings, trials, and determination meetings to figure out if they get the asylum or not. They just disappear into ether and become part of the 22 million illegal aliens in America. So to say that President Trump doesn't have a right to do this is a bald-faced lie. Yes, the president, one, does have the right to do this. Two, there is nothing in the law that says he cannot do this. And there is nothing in the law that says we must allow these illegal aliens to go willy-nilly across the nation. They don't have that right. They are not American citizens. They don't have the right to travel throughout the United States without supervision or without the guidance of the United States or the allowance and the permission from the United States. They're not U.S. citizens. Is this not simple enough? I don't know. It would seem it's not. But we're being played by a lot of emotion. I've heard a lot of people say, well, the president doesn't have the right to deny them entry. Actually, yes, he does. Let's go back to the law. Under 8 U.S. Code 1182, there are illegal aliens that are inadmissible, and they can be denied entry into the United States. These are facts. It's not even a question. It's not like maybe or sort of or kind of. It's a fact. We've seen it done many times under President Carter, who denied Iranians the ability to come into the United States. We've seen it under President Obama, who denied several countries throughout the Middle East entry into the United States. And again, we saw it with the immigration ban earlier in 2017 by President Trump. Yes, the president has a constitutional right to say some people can come into the United States and some people cannot. And that is by the discretion of the commander of the United States, which is the president of the United States. And other presidents have done this. This is a precedent. We can deny anyone we want from being able to come into this country. And we have in the past. This is not new. This is not President Trump overreach of presidential power. This is a power that was given to the president in 1952 expressly by Congress, that he can expressly deny certain groups of people or allow certain groups of people. And when there is an emergency, and this is what asylum is supposed to be about, there's an emergency. There is some reason, some fear of persecution or death because of political beliefs, religious beliefs, ethnic or ethnic background. There's some reason you must leave your country, otherwise you will die. It has nothing to do with whether or not you can get a job. It has nothing to do about the quality of your life in that. It is an emergency. You seek asylum because your nation is under war, or there's a tribal genocide going on. There's a religious persecution that is going on. Please mention to me any of these things that are happening in South America. I know that Venezuela is completely falling apart because they adopted socialist policies, and I understand very clearly that people are having a very difficult time feeding themselves. Understood. Is that a persecution? No, that's just the policy of their nation. It's a bad policy. It's having a bad economic effect, and it's lowering quality of life and killing people, but it's not a persecution. That's just their government. That's the government they elected. That's the policies that they are following. It has nothing to do with the United States. It's not a condition for asylum. And you can say the same thing about Honduras. You can say the same thing about Mexico. You can say the same thing about Nigeria. You can say the same thing about Germany or Qatar or most nations around the world. They're not actively in wars where they could seek asylum. There are places that can, like the Sudan, which I do believe we should have more of the Sudanese people come into the United States because they are being killed because of religious beliefs, something that's been ongoing for more than, it's about 2 decades now. They deserve to be able to have asylum. They have a religious persecution that has been classified by the UN as well as the United States as a genocide. We should have more Sudanese people in the United States. We have a grand total of about 34,000. That's sad because over 250,000, actually I believe the number is now 400,000 of the Sudanese people have been killed. So that's a problem. With another 1.5 million who have been displaced, running away from the slaughter, the religious genocide that is going on there. That is a very clear case for asylum in the United States that we should be able to accept. Tell me how South America is the same. Because you can't. It is not the same. There is not the same one moral equivalence, two legal equivalence. It doesn't exist. But yet we are listening to people who don't like President Trump, a personal preference. They don't like the current president. And by extension, they are now giving people rights that they should not have, that there is no legal precedence for, because they don't like a person who happens to maintain an elected office. Well, I'm sorry, your personal preference doesn't create law. It doesn't mean that law suddenly changes. And it doesn't convey rights to other individuals who never should have them and never have had them. I mean, it's that simple. It really is just that simple, folks. And I know a lot of people don't like this, but we've done it before. In fact, back in 2017, I had written an article about the immigration ban with Joshua Riley. And we went into great detail there because Joshua Riley, who's a friend of mine, and he's a great lawyer, and he has a great political mind, went through and tried to say, well, you can just deny, you can change the law on the fly, and the president doesn't have the power that has already been established. And I told him, no, you don't. That's not correct. Just because you don't like the president doesn't mean it changes anything. And that's just a fact. But we see a lot of people who are taking on that mindset, and it's just wrong. It's just wrong. So I do pose it to you, and I do ask, is it illegal to deny foreigners U.S. rights? If we convey the Fifth Amendment rights to a group of foreign nationals who are not on U.S. soil, who have not claimed asylum, should we allow them in? Because I can tell you a lot of reasons why we shouldn't allow them in. Do we know if any of them are criminals? You cannot tell me you know for a fact that the criminals are not in that group. They may all, or some, or maybe none, may be criminals. We don't know. We don't know if they're in good standing within their nations or internationally. We don't know if they are or are not terrorists. We do not know that they have a reason to be in our nation besides to take on or burden our nation. We don't know that. We have no reason to believe otherwise. We have no reason to believe for them or against them. We know nothing about them. Anyone who tells you that they know that all of these between 5 to 15,000 migrants who are planning to come into the United States, that they know what those people are going to do, is lying to you. There is no one on the face of the earth who can tell you what I am thinking until I say it. How in the world are you going to presume what 15,000 people are thinking and what they plan to do? You cannot know that. That is impossible. And to say that, therefore, because I am assuming the thoughts and the intentions of 15,000 people from a foreign nation who are not on U.S. soil, to assume what they plan to do and to tell me that I have to convey them rights because of that, that's just insane. That is just insane. That is like saying that there are a bunch of people in France and we know what they're going to do. We know what the people in Paris are going to do, the Parisians. What are they doing? They have a plan and they're going to do something. Do you know? Absolutely not. Why? You shouldn't. There's no way you can possibly know. Until they tell you, there's absolutely no way to know. So that's just a silly and unrealistic thing for people to say. And again, it goes back to emotion. And it's meant to convey a certain outcome. And they're using this at this time to try and motivate people to vote against Republicans in the upcoming election. That's where all this is coming from. Because if you don't think this is political and it's maybe not the cause of it or the creation of it is emotional, political, think about this. When else have we ever seen a migration of people coming from South America or anywhere else that are coming into America that have had TV cameras with them, that have been photographed and videotaped and recorded by the news media on their travel here? Can you name another time that we've ever seen that? Because I can tell you, in my lifetime, 50 years old, I cannot recall another time where we had video cameras of migrants coming to America. It has never happened before. Just doesn't happen. And the only reason for it to happen is because it's trying to convey an emotional and moral imperative that does not exist. It is there to give you a reaction emotionally that you would never otherwise have. That's what it is. So whether these people initially started or were motivated or cajoled into coming into the United States, I don't know and I don't care. But I can tell you that this is something that's been a political tool that has been taken advantage of, because they're being used. Every single camera, every single time that we're seeing people interview them on their trip here, the only purpose of that is to change your emotional feeling about it, regardless of what the law actually allows. Because the law says they can be detained, they will be in a better quality of life for it. There is no law anyone can present to me, because I've never seen it and you've never heard anyone quote it. No one in the news has said, here is the statute of law that says that we must take in these asylum seekers, if they are in fact asylum seekers, take these individuals in and release them into the general population. Show me that law. Show me that law, and I'll tell you that President Trump is wrong, and there should not be a detention center, and we should absolutely let them go over to L.A. or over to San Francisco. Please, San Francisco and L.A. can take all 15,000 of them, deal with that economic headache all on their own, because they want them. Fantastic. Take them all. Let them go into your population and run havoc there. But please show me, where's the law that says that we must do that? Because it doesn't exist. We must keep the parents and the children together, okay, as per the allowances of the law, okay, and you can do that in a detention center that allows the parents and families to stay together. If in fact they are families, if in fact they are not child slavers, or using the children, kidnap a child and use that child to claim that you have a child that isn't yours to get a better preferential treatment by the U.S. government, which we have seen done in the past repeatedly under President Obama and under President Trump. So let's assume that every single child is in fact with a family member, which is not statistically correct. Let's say that it is, and they come to the United States. Why can't we put them in a detention center? Show me the law that says we cannot. Because you will never find that. It doesn't exist. So the entire argument about, we can't possibly detain them as we determine their eligibility for asylum in the United States, there's absolutely no law that says we can't do that. And anyone who's telling you that that is not the case and will not present you the law as I am showing to you, as I have shown to you, as I have shown you the law, anyone who's saying that these things are not correct and that we have some moral obligation and they're not willing to show you a law that says I'm incorrect, they're lying to you. They have a political agenda. They're doing this to manipulate you emotionally, to give them a preference which is partisan in its origin. It's just something to think about. And I know I talk a lot about these things, but I think it's important. I do think it's very important. But I want to take a sip of my coffee here. I'm about to get ready to go out to work, but there is one other thing I want to talk about, which is very important, especially about the Board of Elections in New York State in terms of people who are making votes. And apparently, the New York State Board of Elections has been intimidating voters, and I think it's an important story, and you're not going to hear about it anywhere else in the news, but I'm going to come right back, and I'm going to talk about that because I think it's really, really important. So we'll be right back in just one moment. Oops, it ended a little faster. I was replying to a comment by Mike Marshall, and I apologize. I missed the fact that the video had ended there just a second ago. I apologize for that. And as Mike Marshall had mentioned, all American citizens are the only ones that receive the protection of rights provided by the Constitution. Even when declaring asylum, you are still required to go through a hearing to establish the validity of your claim for asylum. And he also mentions that even if asylum is granted, it does not mean you can stay here in the U.S. indefinitely. Asylum is granted until the crisis in that nation that you are coming from changes. And Michael, I agree with you absolutely, because it's absolutely true. Just because I used the example of the Sudan, if the genocide, the religious genocide in the Sudan that's been going on for about 20 years and claimed upwards of almost 500,000 or more deaths, if that ends, then we can send the people in Sudan back to Sudan because it's their nation. They only wanted to get away from being killed. And I have no problem taking in those refugees who are being killed to protect their lives and then let them go back to their nation so that they can go back to their lives in the Sudan. That's their home. Of course, we want them to live their lives as peacefully and as fully as possible. That doesn't mean they get to become American citizens instantly just because they came over here to escape being killed. It doesn't. And the Hondurans don't have any rights beyond the ability to be in the United States if, in fact, that they were trying to save their lives from a war, which I'm unaware of existing, of some persecution that I am unaware of existing. It's just simple. But I do, and Mike, I apologize. As I said, Facebook's been playing a lot with the things that I'm able to see, and when I am able to see them as I'm doing the podcast, there is a delay on my side, plus Facebook likes to hold back a lot on the political commentary for those who are not on the left. So I apologize, I was delayed in responding to you. But I wanted to talk about something else that I think is very important, that has not hit the news yet, and is important for the 2018 elections. And I want to be very clear about this because it is something that affects you. And it's about voting in New York State. So people who are watching this from New York State, please pay attention to this part. And if no one else is, if you skip everything else, at least pay attention to this and do spread this around. It has come to my attention that just as of Friday, New York State, in the Broome County area, the Broome County Board of Elections was speaking on a board, and an individual mentioned, L.J. Trump, as you can see there, mentioned that they did an absentee ballot because they're going to be unable to vote in person because of work conditions. And the Board of Elections, and this is the part that's really important, the Board of Elections responded. Now let me just start first of all. The Board of Elections doesn't normally respond to comments by individuals about anything. They just don't. The Board of Elections is supposed to be a nonpartisan, non-partial, or impartial organization. They're there just to ensure that our election goes through properly. No one breaks the laws, like Dan Livingston, who admitted that he broke the law back in 2017 and is currently running for city council. And he's admitted he broke the law. That was on Spectrum News last November. And the Board of Elections is supposed to take action and say, okay, well, you admitted you broke the law, so therefore you should be fined and or any election you would be in would be prevented. That hasn't happened, but that's what they're supposed to do. Okay. And we're seeing that the Board of Elections is making a comment which seems political in reference to someone saying they voted early through an absentee ballot, which is legal. In New York State, you can't just vote early. There is a difference. You can't just vote early because you want to. Many states, 34 states, allow you to be able to vote early. New York State allows for absentee ballots, where, based on various reasons, you're not going to be in the state because of work or personal life or other conditions. You're invalid. You can't get to the voting booths because of medical reasons or others. that you can put in an absentee ballot. And we've seen a large number of people who have done that in New York State and in Broome County as well. And many of them have been Republicans because they're involved and they want to be involved in the voting process, but because their vote matters and they understand that, but they won't be in the state or able to go and vote at that time. That's legal. And there is no question on that. That is an absolute fact. And the Board of Elections knows that. But for some reason, in this case, when someone mentioned that on a board, I forget which one it was, one of the boards, that they mentioned that they were voting early and was on Facebook, and they said that they're going to be voting early, the comment that they put out there, the Board of Elections, said that Broome County in New York State does not have early voting. That is true, although they have absentees. And they continue to say, so we hope your reason for voting absentee is legitimate if you're posting on social media. Stop right there. That is not something they're supposed to say. The Board of Elections should never question why someone made a vote or how that person made the vote. That is not their job. If a person is suspected of having a vote that is illegal because you're dead and you've been suddenly you're voting absentee as a Democrat, that should be questioned. And we have seen that has happened. 75 people have been registered to a single house that doesn't exist, which also has been reported by the news. That has happened, and they happen to be Democrats. And I'm not picking on Democrats here, but the Board of Elections doesn't get to question that. If the challenge is raised about someone's vote, then the Board of Elections may investigate that, and that vote will either be valid or invalidated. But it does not get to say, I hope you have a legitimate reason. Excuse me, no, you don't get to say that. That is intimidation. You're saying that, well, if we like your vote, we may count it. Or it assumes, in that statement, it is assuming that your vote may not be valid or legitimate. No one in the Board of Elections has that power, nor do they get to say that. That is an intimidation. That is wrong. That's crossing the line, and they should be called out for that. That is very important. And I became aware of this because someone notified me about this chain, and I see this, and that is wrong. The Board of Elections, whether for Broome County or for New York State, does not get to assume any reasoning on someone's vote, whether they vote absentee or not. And whether someone, a non-politician, a non-attorney, uses the term early vote versus absentee, that doesn't matter. That's a human being. That's just regular common knowledge. That's just the way people speak. So if someone is saying, well, I voted early, but what they meant to say is that they voted absentee, who cares? That's just common usage. An attorney would know the difference. The Board of Elections would know the difference. But and if the Board of Elections wants to say, well, you can't, in New York State, you can't vote early, but you can vote absentee if you have a reason, that's fine. But you don't say that just because you voted absentee, that it is illegitimate. That's wrong. That's wrong. And it should be called out for being wrong. That is not permissible. That is something that I'm troubled by. It has nothing to do with whether this person voted Republican or Democrat or Libertarian or Conservative or anything else. I could care less. You could be with Howie Hawkins voting on the Green Party as a straight-up communist if you wish, and I could care less. You have the right to choose to do an absentee ballot. And there are conditions on that, but that is to be questioned after the fact. If you have a reason, you've gone out and you've done that, that's fine. But no one gets to say that you're before the fact, before a challenge, to say that, well, this person has an illegal vote. How dare you assume that? How dare you put that thought into people's minds that, oh, if I put in a vote, it may be made invalid because someone at the Board of Elections doesn't like it. How dare you? And And I want to be very clear about that because they went on and said a quick election law fact. This is the Broome County Board of Elections says a quick election law fact. Absentee ballots can be challenged, potentially voiding your vote, unlike voting in person, which once you're issued a ballot, your vote is guaranteed. Okay, so let's be very clear about that. What are they actually saying in that? That if you have an absentee ballot, we may or may not consider that to be valid. That it's going to be challenged. Challenged by whom? When? How often does that happen? Let's be direct about that. When the Board of Elections, when someone representing New York State, and in particular Broome County, and the Board of Elections is out there saying, well, we may not count your vote. Well, that's like saying, well, don't vote because it won't matter. Your vote doesn't count. How dare you say that? That actually violates election law. That may alter someone's vote and stop them from voting. You're infringing on their right to vote by saying that we may not count it. That your vote, just because it's an absentee, may not count. It's not necessarily important because someone ambiguously may challenge it. Do you know how many thousands of votes are done by absentee in just Broome County alone? Thousands. And you're going to say, well, they may not count. What? Does someone challenge all of them in block and say, oh, well, we got 15,000 absentee ballots. We're just going to challenge them all. No, that's not how the process works. You have to have a reason to challenge it. You have to have a reason to say, I don't believe that particular absentee ballot is valid. Either because that person voted in person, or the address is not real, or that person is dead, or some other valid legal reason not to accept the vote. Just because it's an absentee ballot does not give you the right to say, well, throw it out because, it's an absentee ballot. No, that is not correct. And for the Board of Elections to assume that is wrong. And I really hope other members of the media pick this up. And I know they won't. But they should. They should be very much involved where we're seeing the Board of Elections go onto social media. They should never be on social media. They have no reason to be on social media. If the Board of Elections wishes to reach out to voters and say, hey, if someone says early voting, please understand, New York State doesn't do early voting. We do absentees. And absentees have certain conditions. If you're planning to do an absentee vote, please check to see that you fit these conditions. Period. Stop. Nothing else. But that's not what he's saying here. Or he or she. What the Board of Elections did is they went onto social media to say, this absentee ballot thing, maybe not. We may count it. We may not count it. Your vote really doesn't matter unless you're in person. No, that's not the law, and that's not the fact, and that's wrong. How dare they? How dare they? And I see this person, and I want to go back to this again. In that statement, they went on to say that the Broome County Board of Elections, after making this statement, which implies a bias, then went on to say and blame this on the initial person who had initially to let their friends and people generally know that they had made an absentee ballot and it was possible to do that, but they misstated it as early voting. No big deal. What Broome County Board of Elections came back onto social media and said, you were the first to tag the Board of Elections, so we merely made a did you know for the general public, not just you. You're more than welcome to come back and see your ballot envelope and come in on absentee affidavit ballot counting day on November 14th in our Board of Elections auditorium. The event is always open to the public for viewing. Well, that's a wonderful statement, except let's be very clear about this. How many people can take off a day of work or interrupt their lives to come out and watch several thousand votes be counted and find out whether or not theirs was counted properly? Do you know how many people usually show up for that? Maybe a half dozen. Almost every single one of them lawyers. Half of them for the Republicans, half of them for Democrats. And then there I include also the Libertarians and the Conservatives and the Green Party and Working Families Party. It's all attorneys. It's a bunch of attorneys and the Board of Election, and they go through and they count and they make sure that every one of those absentee ballots was correctly made, and they make sure that the person isn't dead, that the address exists, and that person didn't vote twice. That's what they're there for. Okay, it's a long process. It takes a day, sometimes more. And do you have the time to spend an entire day with a bunch of attorneys going through thousands of votes in that challenge process? If you're alive, if you've only voted once, and you live at the address that you actually say you put your absentee ballot in for, why is the requirement on you? Why do you have that mandate? Because you don't. The mandate is only if someone is making a challenge and your vote is going to go through otherwise. No one's going to question it unless there is a reason to question it. And someone has to say, I wish to challenge that, and here is my legal grounds to challenge that, because your vote is considered absolute, because you have made it. And unless there is reason to question it, it is absolute and accepted. The Board of Elections is putting out, someone on the Board of Elections has come out and made a statement that I am really, really troubled by, and everyone should be very upset. And maybe I should have led this segment talking about that. Maybe. By the way, Kevin Varney joined in. I thank you for that. Maybe I should have started with this, that we're seeing intimidation from the Board of Elections. Maybe I should have started with that. And I don't know if it's directed towards Republicans or conservatives, if it's being targeted against a liberal or a progressive or anyone else, or libertarian or anybody. I don't know. So please don't understand. I'm not attacking this from the point of view that, well, this is Republican versus Democrat. I don't know what that person voted. You may want to infer from their name or some of the names that are on that list as I showed, but that doesn't mean anything, because anyone can vote any way they want. You can be registered to any party you want and make any vote you want. It is your vote. You have a right to vote any way you wish, whether you're in a party or not. If you're a Democrat and want to vote Republican, you can do so. There is nothing preventing that. It is your vote. You have the right to choose whatever you think is the best choice. And I hope to God that everyone does. Make the choice, vote that way, because you have that right. And every vote should happen. And I hope to God we're going to see more than 4.4 out of 10 people actually come out and vote. I hope so. I don't think so. I actually think it's going to be 177 to 186,000 people are going to vote. Roughly 4.4 or 4.7 out of 10 people are actually going to vote, which is abysmal. It's horrible. It's one of the worst numbers in the nation. And while it is better than in 2014, when we saw 3.2 out of 10 people actually voted, which is incredibly embarrassing and just abysmal for our politics. No wonder we have so much corruption in our state when no one's showing up to vote. And that's not partisan, that's just what we have. There is no question about that. But I'm very troubled by this, very troubled, when I am seeing the Board of Elections go out there and effectively intimidate voters by saying their votes don't count. That is what I read from that chain and from that comment. A comment that the Board of Elections does not normally make. They have no reason to make that comment. They have no reason to say it in the way they said. If they were trying to notify the public on November 2nd, where the last of the absentee ballots has already been stopped. By the way, on November 2nd, if you sent out an absentee ballot, if I remember my dates correctly, it's too late. You had to have them in by Thursday, November 1st, as I recall. And if I am correct, on I believe it was November 1st was the last day. And don't hold me to that. I'm not an election expert on absentee ballots and what day they have to be sent out. You can go to the Board of Elections and check on their website, and it'll say for sure. But I believe it was on Thursday was the last day, November 1st. But let's assume that it wasn't. All they had to say was, well, New York State doesn't have early voting. You can go to New York State Board of Elections website, And you will be able to see the conditions to allow absentee voting. Period. Nonpartisan, non-prejudicial, no negativity to it. It is a clarification of a point just to make sure. And whether or not someone links and says, hey, here's the Board of Elections, I went out and voted. Here's the Board of Elections website, I went out and voted. I used absentee ballot and I made a vote. You can too. That's all that was done. Someone said, I made a vote through an absentee ballot. Here's the Board of Elections website. You can too. That's not partisan. That's not disenfranchising anyone. It's allowing people to know that they have options available that are legal in the state of New York. And whether the terminology was exactly correct or not, yes, the Board of Elections can clarify the terminology. It's not an early vote. It's an absentee ballot. Okay, fine. But to assume that someone's vote is illegal or illegitimate is a disenfranchisement of voters. And that should be investigated. We have a problem. We have a problem in Broome County, and I believe that that is just endemic of a bigger problem in New York State. That New York State is willing to disenfranchise certain voters. If the person who is making that statement was not someone who apparently, by their name, is in favor of President Trump, would they have made the same statement? Because I can tell you, I searched through, I have yet to see where the Board of Elections has made another comment on social media for someone who isn't. Show me a liberal, a Democrat, where they've made a similar statement and the Board of Elections went onto social media to chastise that person and say that their vote may not count. Because I don't believe it exists. To my knowledge, it doesn't exist. And if the Board of Elections can provide that information, I would love to see it, as they should, since I am a member of the public, I am a voter, I am a resident of New York State, and I would like to see the impartiality of the Board of Elections of Broome County to show me that they are not picking sides. How dare they? How dare they do this? Now, I do have some comments that have come in, and I haven't mentioned them, so I apologize. But I do see Kevin Varney has been here, and I thank you for that. And I see that Kevin Dyer is here, and I thank him. I see Michael Marshall said, people have become disenfranchised by the voting process. Too many people believe that their votes do not make an impact. This has to change, and we, the people, have to realize each and every vote counts, and we have to use our voice through the ballot box to guide this nation to the will of the people. And Michael, I agree with you completely. And just to let people know, there is a slight delay between when I'm seeing some of your messages and as I'm doing this. There is a delay here, and that's mostly because of Facebook. So I apologize if I'm not getting to your comments immediately, but I am trying to. And I also see Kelly Wildener has joined us. And Kelly, it's always great to see you there. And I'm sure, Kelly, you would be very upset about this as well. So let me recap again. We had a comment. We had an individual who went on social media, I believe it was Facebook, and said that they made an early vote because they would be out of town and or working, and they linked to the Board of Elections so people would be able to see how to do that as well. The Board of Elections for Broome County went onto social media, made a comment, and said that this person that their vote as an absentee may not be legitimate for the mere fact that this person is saying it on social media, which is wrong. And this person happened to have a name that implies that they may or may not support President Trump, which makes the comment from the Broome County Board of Elections appear to be partisan. That is wrong. That is absolutely wrong. And we should hold them accountable to that because that is not their job. This is wrong. I don't care who you are. Now, if you have any questions, here's also the New York Board of Elections home, their website for absentee ballots and voting. And you can see the conditions that they're there and how to do so, and where are the deadlines, which they have a link to. And you can go there yourself and you can double check this for yourself. But in there, you do not see them say that your vote is not valid or that it will be counted as invalid. How dare anyone from the Board of Elections imply that the vote of any individual in the United States is invalid without any proof, or that it will be considered invalid, or that it may not be considered legitimate, and that it could be challenged for no reason whatsoever, because that is not the process. There must be a reason for that challenge. Are you dead? Is the address valid? Are you a valid voter with the right to vote? Have you voted twice? There has to be a challenge. And that challenge has to be based on a legitimate reason. Otherwise, your vote is sacrosanct, whether you do it in person or you do it absentee. And we should be livid. I am. You should be too. We should all be livid about that, because that is wrong. And I hope the rest of the news media pick this up. I hope that the rest of the news media go to the Board of Elections and ask them to explain this. I will try to do so. Again, I am working and I'm about to go out to work. I'm running a little late as is. But this is important. This is very vitally important that we understand that no one should question someone's vote without a legitimate and solid reason. No one should infer in any way that anyone's vote will not be accepted. Every vote is vital. I don't care who you vote for, as long as you have a legitimate reason. Have a reason for your vote. Come out and vote. And I encourage everyone to do so. And I always have encouraged everyone to do so. Would I prefer you to vote Republican? Absolutely. Would I prefer you to vote conservative? Absolutely. Does that mean that you must? Absolutely not. And I have never said other than that. Have a reason, go out there and vote on that reason, whatever that may be, regardless of what party you may be in. I've always said that. I always will say that. But how dare anyone, and I know I'm berating this subject and I'm going over it and over it, but I want this to be made very, very clear. No one should ever infer or cause people to question their vote that they are making without due cause, without extreme reason. It is our fundamental right, and no one should be able to question that right, ever. People have died for this right. People have bled for this right. It's something that's fundamental to our nation and unique around the world, that we have this without violence, without national riots and fighting, that we are able to use our right to change and guide our government. And no one should ever in any way imply that that cannot happen, that we cannot make that vote and move our government forward and our representation forward without just cause. I don't know how to make that more important or make it more serious or make it more clear to people. We should, and I'm going to try and follow up with the Board of Elections and get an apology for that and get a retraction or a clarification on this, and to make sure that it isn't someone who is being politically biased or someone who assumed the name of the Board of Elections and made this comment. I don't want to see that. Do I want to see someone fired for that? Not necessarily. But I want to see the Board of Elections make sure this is clear. And I'm very upset. I'm very upset. I just don't know how to explain how upset I am about this. And I don't know. Maybe it's just me. But I think it's important. And I hope that the rest of the news media will follow up on this. I hope that the news media will reinforce that every vote matters and that no one has a right to question your vote unless there is a legitimate and substantial reason for that. And we should encourage people of every party, of every philosophy and philosophical mindset to go out there and vote if they have the ability to do so, whether that's through absentee voting or whether that's in person, to go out there and do this. I don't know. But that's me, and I'm ranting. And I'm ranting today. I'm tired. I'm out there. I'm going to go back to work in a second. I got to change and get out, and I'm going to try and get more people to go out and vote, to make their choices and to represent and make sure that we have the best representation possible at every level of government, because I'm involved and I believe it's important. I hope people will go out and vote, no matter whom you vote for. Get out there, vote. Have your reason, stand by it, and vote. I hope everyone does. I'd like to see Republicans win a clean slate. I would love that. But no matter what, go out and vote. It's your right. Choose who you think is the best choice, the best consequence. Who's going to help improve our lives and the quality of our lives on the issues that matter to you? The Second Amendment, the First Amendment, the ability to have a job, to have a better paying job, to be able to open up a business. Go out there, vote on those things. These are things that are important to us all. Vote. Be involved. And do not allow people like this individual, whomever it may be, man or woman, whoever it is, from the Board of Elections that would threaten or question your vote. Because I tell you what, I will stand up for your vote. And I will stand up for your right to vote, whether that's through an absentee ballot or whether that's in person. And I will not allow someone to just question that and to threaten that for no reason whatsoever. No, I don't agree with that. And I will follow up on this. I will be speaking on this more. But right now, I have to go to work. But I did want to spend some time with everyone. I hope it wasn't too rushed. I hope it wasn't too much of a rant for everyone. It's just been a very, very hectic time. And Mike Marshall mentions that it is more than our right, it is our obligation to our nation, he's speaking about voting, to be able to vote. And I agree, Mike, I do. But I hope that everyone, and Mike, I mentioned this to you, to Kelly, to Kevin Varney and Kevin Dyer, and everyone else who may see this after the fact. I know it's Sunday and everyone was at church or just waking up, but I wanted to take the time to come out and speak to everyone during this very busy time, this very important time just prior to the election, to reinforce that everyone should come out and vote, to go out there and talk about the emotional manipulation that is going on as people are trying to convey rights to foreign nationals that don't have them. And what is the impact of that? And whether or not we've actually violated the law to be able to say, no, you just don't have that right because you're not an American. And there's nothing wrong with saying that. There's absolutely nothing wrong with saying you're not an American, you don't have the American rights, just as I can say I'm an American citizen, I don't have Japanese rights, and I'm not in Japanese soil, or in England, or in Germany, or in Honduras, Venezuela, or anywhere else in the world. I think these are all important things to say, and I hope that they help motivate people. I really, really do. Michael Marshall says, yes, Mike, I agree. It is our obligation. Absolutely, I agree. But with that all said, I hope everyone has enjoyed this or at least found it interesting. I hope everyone is able to spread this around, share it with people who were not able to be here. I will get this out. I have a couple of podcasts I'm backed up on. I'm going to get them all out probably on after election night. I'll try and do it tonight or tomorrow, but I will make sure that this is out for everyone. You'll be able to see it on Facebook. I'll get it out on YouTube as well. And I hope everyone's going to be well, and we'll talk again very, very soon.